Good afternoon. So wonderful to be back with you, talking about issues for business that need attention and careful peeling of all the elements that are critical to the running of businesses. My name is Ashutosh Sinha, and I am your host. I will be your host for the next 90 minutes to talk about something very interesting. Today, the topic is Retail Next, the future of CX or customer experience. And what better topic to talk about in a world which is driven digitally, more so in the last 18 months. We just don't tire of speaking of that 18 months. And the reason is very clear. The world has turned upside down. This kind of a situation has created opportunities for businesses. So I will try and raise some of those issues that the digitally savvy customers are making brands, and that, all what these customers are making brands and retail companies do as they transform in the post-pandemic world. While I raise the issues, there is a stellar set of people who will share their points of view and their decades of experience on the topic. But first, let me give you a big picture, a broad picture. Here's what it looks like. India is going through a retail revolution like never before. The promise of organized retail market showing explosive growth of the next decade has kept small and large brands busy as they try and reach out to their consumers. Busy, did I say that? Well, hyper busy would have been a better term to use. And why not? Because of the sheer size of the opportunity. With the rapid expansion of digital channels, brands now have a greater opportunity to take their message to the consumer, something and sometimes directly as well. On other occasions, one of the major challenges brands face is delivering an omni-channel approach to the consumer. For retail companies, that is critical. They want to be seen with the customer, trying to influence his buying decision at every stage of the way. Omnichannel, that is the magic word for the customer experience today. As CX evolves, retail companies are employing methods to keep customers informed and also influence his buying behavior. So, how can retail companies drive that omni-channel approach in the post-pandemic, digitally driven world? Getting consumers used to a better experience can help brands win them as they embark on their digital journey. And quite a few of these companies are putting together their digital strategies, or have been at least putting together their digital strategy as the world was hit by pandemic and we all came out of that. How can the consumer journey be made better with digital interventions that he can relate to? So it is about taking the big picture view that companies want. As I said, some of those leading names are joining us to talk about the issues. So let me introduce all those who are joining us today. The first, Vivette De Cruz, Senior Director, Retail and Consumer Products Practice at EY, joins us. Thanks so much, Vivette, for joining us. Amarnath Roy, Senior Vice President and Head of Omnichannel, Metro Cash and Carry India. Anirudh Banerjee, Chief Sales Officer at Spencer's Retail. Adarsh Nair also joins us from Airtel, and among other roles that he has, he's CEO of Airtel Digital. Anand Narang, Vice President Marketing and Consumer Experience, Bata India. Katie Prasad, Managing Director and RVP India and SARC at Zendesk. And Aman Thakral, Business Head at Target Integration. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Let me first ask Prasad for his opening remarks, and also so that after that, we can dive into our discussion. Prasad, it's over to you.
Thank you, Ashu. Thank you, ET, for this wonderful opportunity. If you're okay, I wanted to quickly share a small deck that I could run through as a context. Okay, host is disabled. I don't have rights, but it doesn't matter. Like Ashu talked about, year 2020, 2021 changed everything. It has brought in some businesses to the knees, and it brought some businesses to the skies. And it changed the consumer behavior. So especially in the context of retail, I think you're seeing a hockey stick growth across, especially in the e-commerce particularly, and then retail industry actually, as a back end of that, it came in. But in this industry, if you look at it, or even outside, there's one thing that basically constantly evolving is your customer expectations. Can you believe 75% of customers think about your CX before making a purchase? I want you to go back and reflect upon you being a consumer. What are you seeing when you're trying to do a business? Is it a product? Is it a service? Or maybe a customer experience that you had with a different brand or that brand? 50% of those customers will leave if they have just one bad experience. That means if you are running a business, it's important how important the CX is for your business, because you could lose a customer just with one bad experience. Now, add it all, I think overall your company's success today and in the future really depends on how your customer service is and customer experience is. Now, having said this, I want to take a pause and take back and ask you a couple of questions. Now, there are two things that have changed. Number one, you've seen businesses are differentiating themselves or competing themselves on experiences, not by product and services, because those are available across everywhere. If I get a better experience in this particular brand that I work, so I will do more business, that become more loyal. Now, what that really calls, I think I call that as officially arriving of experience economy. We are all living an experience economy, and that experience economy, the currency is the customer experience. And better you have it, the richer you are if you're a business. But at the same time, look at the customer. And the customer has evolved in the last 18 months, like Ashutosh talked about it. Now, those customers earlier who used to start from a physical journey, digital journey, we talk about combination of physical, but I think we have officially arrived in a what I call a customer journey mapping, which is called digital first, virtual every day. If I'm segmenting a customer today, my customer, irrespective of the business that I operate, my customer might start their journey with digital as a first option. They might look at some information online on a website or competitor website or accessible across the globe, and then probably they will make a visit to you in offline retail or maybe make a purchase on digital journey itself. But digital is become the primary first step towards the journey, and your customers are embarking into the journey. So it's very important. And in this journey, I think if you want to deal with the customers today, I think what we have seen working with several hundreds of thousands of customers across the globe, we have seen the emergence of what we call messaging. So customers today, you want to live an experience economy, and I call language that we speak is what we call messaging. You want to make sure you as a business wanted to engage your customers the way they engage their friends and family in a very messaging formula. That means if I'm talking to, for instance, Amar today, maybe I would have gone back to my WhatsApp and I would have interacted with Amar 4 months ago, maybe wished him on his birthday, maybe our anniversary, historically, I can take a look at every interaction that I had with a customer. If I'm a business, I could see it all out. And so as the customer expectations. Customer wants you to realize that, they've interacted with you 4 other times, and this is the common thing that's talked. So they want you to have a historical conversation that they had with you. So that way, the emergence of messaging is arrived. And I call that is a currency to live and thrive in customer experience. And I think that sets the tone on how future of CX would be, that all will be live and thrive. But, I gave from what I think, but I'm keen to learn from the expert panel sitting on today and also to participate. Thank you, ET again. Ashutosh, over to you.
Okay, so Prasad, you always make me think, you're talking of customer and the history of interactions, so that history can help me scale geography, if I may put it that way, and move across different areas as well. So I have this habit of, getting to the headline part of it. Let's start with the questions. And, it's very interesting that we're talking today, because look at the kinds of companies that we're talking today. And Bata, almost 100 years in India. Spencer's, well over 100 years in India. And we're also getting some input from Target Integration, from some of the others, from Zendesk and the other companies. So it's a very interesting discussion that will happen. So let's start with the experience of the oldest companies. First, let's get to Bata, we've all used the product, I guess, at some stage of our growing up years. 90-year-old brand that has well over 1,000 retail stores in the country. Anand, how is the team at Bata making, as the proverb goes, the elephant dance so that you can address the pulse of the customer?
Yeah, thank you, Ashu. Very interesting analogy you actually put us. So we like to call ourselves as 126 years young. So globally, Bata was started in 1894. So we prefer, to be seen as slightly more younger, or contemporary. The omnichannel journey, for us has been very, very interesting. I think COVID was one of the shockers. Stores shut down all across the world. Consumers were stuck at home. Nobody was actually buying formal shoes and what the brand was actually known for, or even school shoes, as it was already known. But before actually COVID hit, the omni-channel journey at Bata had already started. Bata being present in about 70 markets, we could see this journey evolving in Italy, in Indonesia, parts of Latin America. So we could see that there is a shift there. And when I talk about omnichannel, it's not just looking at only the customer experience side. It's also looking at the availability of the product. How do I actually ensure that the product that a consumer walked in to actually buy can be delivered to their homes, even from another store or even from a warehouse? So I think to that extent, to the transparency. So let's say if I'm actually searching for a product, how it can actually be made aware, a consumer can be made aware about where it is lying. To simple things like driving sales and traffic and integrating digital touchpoints. So you started your journey, as Prasad was saying, you started your journey here, you were researching online, you land up into a store. Is there a history that I can actually capture that yes, consumer was searching for a casual shoe or a sneaker, and when he or she lands up in a store, the staff is actually made aware that the consumer was looking for a running shoe. So I think it's that kind of granularity of information that we actually look at when we are creating an omni-channel experience. The last leg I would actually say is, basically segmenting consumers, because if you look at omni-channel consumer, it's not one consumer. It could be our, mom and dads, who might be in 70s. So they are like digital novices, very difficult for them to actually start using credit cards because they just don't understand it. They are more like a cash economy. To somebody who is a digital adopter, people in their 30s and 40s, very comfortable across there. And then you have the digital natives, people who are born in the internet era. They actually open up and there was Wi-Fi all around. So that's like the Gen Z, I would actually call. So I think you need to tailor the customer experiences for each one of them, right from discovery to deliveries to how they purchase, what is the level of human versus a bot. So I think that's what we are actually doing at Bata, looking at segmenting the consumers and creating distinct, experiences for them.
So 100 years in India, almost 100 years, and even longer globally for Bata, but Spencer's is even more older. How difficult is it, Aniruddha, for you to make the elephant that you manage dance according to the way you want?
Hi, Ashutosh. Good afternoon, everyone. So though it's 100 years, but in new avatar, it's around 21 years from the time it is with Goenkas. But last the 6 quarters are like probably 60 years of transition that we have seen. The same set of customer, same catchment got fragmented into general trade, got fragmented into new age retailer, the big retailer, big box retailer, the digital retailer, and few of the local guys, local new entrepreneur who also started the physical form of it. So it's all about getting the agility in the food and grocery. And being in food and grocery, we are not shut for a single day. So we are a part of the essential community. So our transition of understanding the CX expectation, adaptability, agility started from day one. So what was the out of store model, which was around, let's say 2 to 3%, is now more than 25% in a 6 quarter time. So what does it mean? It's not only consumer change, our business model got changed, the employee base of 5,000, they were hired and trained with some skill sets. Now, they are into a different skill set. So how we have trained the entire employee base to get into that space to adopt the new CX experience. I'll talk more about particular experience and how consumers are expecting. In a brief sentence, I'll just give one live example. Probably in 2 years back, the destination was a non-food category for me within the store. Then it got into fish within the non-food segment. Then now during pandemic, it became Hilsa, a destination category within that segment. Post Wave 2, it became Bangladeshi Hilsa. And today, the CX expectation is boneless Bangladeshi Hilsa. So that kind of expectation consumer has gone through, and we have managed through a new concept of relationship manager, which normally you have into white goods, service industries. Now for our oil, basic, rice or other commodities, we have a relationship manager. So we have multiple channels to service it. Apart from the digital, we are in chatbots. We have a traditional 100-year-old channel in India, which is a phone delivery. Now modern trades are adopted, and we are the pioneer into it. So a large double digit of sale is coming through a phone delivery model. Just to conclude it, in the phone delivery, when the customer is ordering, one order also came last week, say it's in a snacks category, the customer wrote Papa Wala brand. So that's the ultimate statement of customer relationship and CS expectation from retailers. Yeah.
Okay, that sounds very interesting. Okay, so when I try and speak to the other brands which are also part and you'll be hearing about today, let me try and get Vivek in and get a sense from her. Vivek, when you look at the consumer and retail companies with their strategies, their CX strategies, what are some of those points that stand out from the pre-pandemic times to now? How has the state of preparedness for some of them changed over these 18 months and probably looking better as well?
Yeah, thanks, Ashu. I think there has been a big fundamental shift that we have seen in these past 20 months. I've been working with retail companies in categories like apparel, grocery, even jewelry, right? Who are pushing very strongly for this entire omni-channel journey of theirs, right from the time of defining their strategy to the time of implementation. And I think as Anand also mentioned, and I heard one of the panelists say, some of these companies who have done this correctly are seeing sales as much as 30 to 35% coming through this omni-channel business of them, right? So they are seeing a fundamental shift in the ways of selling. Let me explain through a story, right? One of the brands that we were working with, a very large sports retailer, and pushed by COVID, stores shut down, they decided to embark on this entire omni-channel. So as any typical retailer, they got listed on Marketplace, they set up their own store. In the stores, they try to do, digital checkouts and digital cataloging and everything. But no matter what was happening, the sales were still stuck at a sub 5%. So when we got in to understand what the brand was going through, we realized that the customers felt that their online and offline experience was completely different. So while offline was very engaging, online suddenly became like as if I was going to a completely new brand to buy, right? And therefore, we realized that brands now are focusing a lot of time, which Anand mentioned, Anirudh mentioned, in really getting the customer segmentation right? Who is that customer? What is the experience that they want? And then having all the building blocks put together. And brands are struggling a bit, but I think they are getting it now that in terms, let me set the foundation right with the customer and then put my building blocks of supply chain, analytics, organization structure, KPIs in place so as to ensure that it's a sustainable model.
Okay, so just to remind everyone watching, there are quite a few people around who are with us online. Make sure that you put in your questions because some of the experts would love to take them. And of course, leave everyone wiser with their experience, their collective experience. Okay, let's move on to the next question. And Vivek, you just make me remember some comment I heard from someone. Of course, I didn't verify it with the company. This is Titan, almost doing 100 crores a month in online sales. 100 crores or so in, well, I wish I had confirmed it so that I could say it with more confidence that this number officially they have confirmed, but I didn't get it confirmed. Anyway, let's move on to the next question. Amarnath, if companies are looking to start with, and at some stage you have rudimentary CX experiences and CX strategies, but if they were looking to do that omni-channel approach, where should that beginning happen?
Yeah. Nice question, Asu. I think, so, where most of the retailers actually struggle, the struggle is between, you want to move very fast, very agile, you want to adopt what is happening around, you want to change. But if you look at the Indian landscape, Ashu, I think most of the retailers have been in the ecosystem for quite some time now, 10, 15, 20, 30, and 100 years also, right? The worst part is, I think in this years of existence, we didn't look at our legacy system, how to change it. Yeah, how to make it, a more robust system, a better tech stack that can be used for personalization. Yeah. We never thought about engagement with the customers off store, on store, outside, yeah, on app, etc. And in last 5 years, what it has changed, Asu, is all organizations have started thinking about how to give customer a better experience of on store or maybe extension of the store through app. Now, if you look at the customer journey per se, Asu, it has got 3 stages primarily to define. One is your discovery. Then is your, purchase. When you discover something, you tend to purchase, and then you engage. Yeah. For a retailer, if you ask me, all 3 of this gets into one single funnel, and any disruption at any point in time in any of this will actually lead to a dissonance. Now, if I have to tell you where to start, I think the best part to evaluate it is you need to have a seamless, across integration, offline, online. You need to have a seamless data flow, right? The app or the system that you are creating should have an ability to, roll out the dynamic content and experience for the customers, right? Your tech stack that you are building in should suit, or maybe the tech stack in simplest form, I can tell you, should be able to personalize it. I'll explain some of this.
Sure.
See, when I talk about, cross-channel integration, I think most of the retailers, what we did, we never build our own IT systems. We kind of used it for plug and play. Yeah, because we wanted to be like, quickly boarding the bus. We didn't want to miss the bus on, say, whole digitization process. Now, what are the implications of it? The implication is pretty clear. So beyond a point, you will not be able to customize the plug and play. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So for example, I can give you about Metro is, we are not the IT companies. We had to do it. It was, for us, it was like, well crafted, careful crafted strategy where we thought, let's just do it. And the approach that we took was like, crawl, walk and run. Yeah. We didn't want it to start running by just doing the commerce. And as Vivek mentioned, what we did is we chose our customer segment whom to target with first. And as you know, I mean, most of the panelists and the viewers, if they don't know, we are a B2B organization. Okay. We are governed by the government FDI guidelines, not opening to anyone and everyone. So here we took our Kirana customers, which is like, a large portfolio for Metro, the bread and butter. We kind of build our strategies around Kirana, hotel, restaurant, caterers. We took Kirana as one primary segment. So when we started working on it pre-pandemic, we were just on time. When we launched something in January 2020, 1 month of beta testing, and we had to rush towards getting it launched pan-India. So what we did, Ashu, is first first things first, as I said, crawl, walk, and run. We ensure that the customer has got a very seamless discovery and purchase phase. Yeah. And then we prioritize things, and that was on the move, Asu. So we had 15, 20, 30 things that we had to prioritize basis our business requirement. Then what we did, we prioritized, deprioritized based on the customer feedback as we interacted. And one of these things was also during the pandemic, supplies were completely disrupted. Yeah. And as a B2B retailer, we were always dependent on, say, manufacturers to streamline the whole supply. And the implications was that, post billing, you always had some amount which was supposed to be refund, while the refund process was pretty seamless, going back into the source account and so on. But looking at our entire banking system and infrastructure, it used to take 3 to 5 working days for us. One of the functionalities that we built and was in our plan was wallet, so that Metro has its own wallet, the customer transactions becomes very seamless. We had to prioritize it. Yeah, so it was supposed to come in 2022, we prioritize it. And we prioritize it because we didn't want it to block the working capital of Kirana, who were already struggling. So this is like, again, you trying to personalize that experience of the Kirana. Now they can look at the money in the wallet. Now, the other thing that came us as an idea from looking after customers, feedback, etc., is why can't that wallet be used in our offline stores? We thought of one use case, so that, this is something to streamline the whole, refund return process. But now we have a use case that the customer wants to use it offline as well as online. So on the 3 legs, if you look at, so discovery is there. Now the purchase is enabled. Now on the engagement part, so this is very critical. And as I said, the data are lying in different systems, different corners. Yeah. Now any you take it, any retailer, yeah, be it Walmart, be it us, be it anyone, our legacy systems are our biggest barriers, and you need to iron it out. So if the data is lying in different corners, so it becomes extremely difficult to engage with your customers, because you would be pulling out one data.
Very important point. Let me go to Adarsh on that, because that is a very interesting part, and it's very important because Adarsh, the sheer size of the number of customers that you handle. Give me your experience of the data part that Amarnath was mentioning about, and also how did you go about hemming that omni-channel approach with that scale of the number of customers?
As I was hearing everybody speak, I could connect to a lot of you, and I connected most to Amar, right? Because Edel got a bit lucky. It was not a month before, but in 2018, we took an initiative to upgrade our customer experience. So we had a good year and a half worth of runway. And I'll give you a little bit of context before I answer the question.
Sure.
We divided our customer experience strategy into 5 pillars. And it's the same, keywords that are coming up again. Omni-channel, digital first. We had a unique one, war on failures. 3rd pillar, the open telco. Somebody talked about transparency. We want to be transparent to our customers. And finally, purpose, which was a mission to just remember that we still had a lot of frontline agents helping our customers. So just keeping them in mind and saying everybody else is working for them, including me. We're all working for the frontline, right? So these 5 pillars defined our strategy back in 2018. And it's funny, we were talking about numbers. Roughly in a month, the telco does about a little above 5,000 crores of revenue in a month across our LOBs, right? Today, 3,000 crores of that flows through online. That's a staggering number, 60%. 2018, we're probably half of that in terms of online representation. So a lot changed during the pandemic, but it was a build-up that we had some time to go do and take care of. So I'll answer the omni-channel question first. So what's happening inside the telco today? We have distribution now as a platform. So every time the customer touches us, so they could touch us inside one of our 400 stores, they could touch us in one of our million Kirana points where we sell our SIMs. It could be on our app and web, or it could be even in our contact centers. Anytime they touch us, it's all connected to one system. This is your omni-channel kind of viewpoint, and we built it in parts and pieces, right? We got one channel done, then we went to the second, then we went to the third. All the data is now centralized in one DMP, a data management platform. These two resources of tying the channels back to one centralized data is what's powering our omni-channel version. And we are still taking baby steps. By no means are we complete. But today, if you walk into the store, talk about an order, go back into our app, you will see that order carry over. And then when you call our call center, you can very quickly switch into that order that you had just started. You can finish it in the call center. So this is actually running today, painstakingly done over the last many, many years, right? I'll give you one more example of how we had to innovate during the pandemic. So we were thinking digital anyway, but the pandemic did make us change. We're roughly at about 40% online recharges at the beginning of the pandemic. And as many of you called out here, our customers were at loss. Those who were recharging offline, they could not even walk into a particular recharge center to recharge because neither did they know how to do it online. So this was a real problem. So we launched something called the Superhero, where we incentivized any human being who could help their friend recharge. They would actually get a 4% cut of the recharge. Everything done through our app. Believe it or not, 30% of our recharges went through the Superhero during the pandemic. And our total recharge strength went at one point in time to 80%. It's kind of fallen back to 60. All this was our journey during the pandemic. And today, it's just the continuation of that. The world has changed. Everybody's online. I'm looking for the day when 80-90% of our business is entirely online. So let me pause there. More than happy to go into details.
Sure. So let me ask Aman then. So Aman, how do brands decide, retailers decide, how should the intervention happen, and at what stage of its, of its existence, of its business, should the intervention happen?
Thanks, Ashu, for having me here. See, very interestingly, the choice of automation does not really have a particular timeline. It's not that you complete 10 years of your journey, go for automation, complete your 15 years of journey, go for automation. It varies from company to company. If you look at it, it's just like a human life. Everybody has their own journey. Now, as an organization, probably you start in 1800s or start in 1700s. But if you have a vision where you want to go to, you will surely reach to in certain time. I know everybody is talking about pandemic, how pandemic changed the game. But if you really ask me, I think the game got changed way before than that. It's just that we realized it only when we being kept in the cages of our own house. It is actually the way you look at it. If you look at the numbers done by a lot of e-commerce platforms, or if you look at the numbers done by a lot of food delivery platforms, you will realize that the numbers were ever growing even before the pandemics. Right. It's just that the pandemic came up and it became a catalyst to make everybody feel that, listen, there's no other way but this way. So like how others said, it is that you have to make sure that the journey, the category of your customer is getting served well or not. Now, yes, like Mr. Anand from Bata was saying, there are categories of customer. You have customers who are in the early age, who born in the Wi-Fi world, they have internet access, and you have people who need support. Now, very interestingly, telecommunication has changed. If you look at the period where we had 2 major players, then became 3, the data availability became super easy. Earlier, data used to be very expensive, and now data is very easy. You would see nowadays a very common phrase used in our household called WhatsApp University has a lot of contribution of people who are not really going and working, but sitting at home. We all have our family WhatsApp groups, and you would see the first good morning message does not come from a young guy, but comes from a guy who's actually in their 40s, 50, I won't say 40s, but yeah, 50s, 60s. Now look at the way technology has been adopted. Look at the way people are changing. And yeah, pandemic, you can blame it. It is what is had grown, but from my point of view, we've been saying this past 13 years that this day will surely come. It just came a little early because of pandemic, but yes, it is. Now, going back to your point, how businesses decide, that's completely up to the business. Do they want to have this journey done quicker? Do they want to, put down their whole overheads little lower, have more automated systems, have the history tracked, conventionally you would realize that why the moms and pop stores, the corner stores always worked, because you knew that local person. This local person can give you credit. This local person can know what is happening in your life. This local person can tell you that you usually eat these things in the evening. Now, if we do not track this history, and like Katie said, it's all about the data. Data is the newest currency. We are, yes, looking for crypto. We are, yes, looking for everything. But data is the real currency. And if you have that data correctly managed, or you have intentions to correctly manage it, you can start this journey as soon as you launch the company, or probably after 200 years.
Okay. Okay, so just to, since we're talking number of years for the company, I was just reminded that Airtel completed 25 years last year. Yes, so I get a thumbs up from others. So I'm pretty much spot on with the age of the company. Let's move on and to ask Prasad. Prasad, you mentioned about the experience economy. Does that customer, does that drive everything? So how does that kind of a thought of keeping the customer at the center of it all translate through other parts of the businesses?
I think keeping the customer at the center is a core pillar, and I'm so good to hear everybody talking about how important the experience. I've heard others talking about digital journey starting sometime before even Amar talking about. I think everybody mentioned about that. I think, but if you look at, I think traditional businesses across the world are two industries: banking, financial services. Second is also retail. There are two ones which are pillars of the business. Tech. Once telco is 35 years, Airtel, Bharti is in India, but also before. But I think one thing which we see, I'll take a solid example of banking industry, which is probably slightly outside of the purview, but you just understand how putting customer in the center is important. You might have, a personal relationship, wealth management, insurance, maybe 4 or 5 other products. They could all be treated as an individual customers rather than one, because you defined a business process around how you want to deal with customers rather than putting in the customer. Oh, if I have a customer, the customer would need a personal, personal banking, and also would need a credit card. So the centering around the shift has happened in India, I think, and across the globe, of putting customer at the center in the last about 5 to 10 years prominently. But in the last 18 months, if you're not putting customer in the center of the business, I think most of the businesses have went out for, they went out of the business. Very simple. And also Vibit talked about defining customer segment, but I think I will take that one level above and say, you got to define what the customer experience journey is. First, define the journey that you want your customers to have with you, and then start putting anything. Sometimes customer experience journey mapping means not about putting a technology. Technology is one of the choice that you will have to solve in the journey, but not the only option. But if you think about customer experience and the journey, then the rest of things can follow through. And your business will stay for a long period of time, because these customer expectations are changing and changing very rapidly. But because you mapped all the journeys, it is far more easier to move around. Imagine, otherwise around where the world was, where you centered around businesses, where you can't move around. And those businesses who are kept business in the center or customer, all either been disrupted or been dismantled, which is into smaller pieces so that they can all focus on the customer.
Okay. So the thought has to begin at the top. The change probably has to begin at the top. So Vivek, when you speak to companies, how does the board, or maybe at the top level, at the CXO, the CEO level, how has their thought changed that is driving, and how is it showing up when you speak to companies?
So if I had to say, Ashu, I think the first fundamental change that we have seen is that when I used to go about maybe 4 or 5 years, or even maybe 1 2 years ago, CXO CEOs used to say, oh, this is how my stores are doing. This is how my online is doing. This is how my third party is doing. But today, when you actually go, and what I think a lot of the panel members have said is that they are changing their view, right? They're saying that I want to become, for example, with one of these apparel companies, we define their objective as I want to become the stylist for my consumer. Now, how is it that I can change myself to meet that requirement of the consumer? So that is what we are seeing, an entire approach rather than a channel, how I'm selling, how I train the people. It's more about saying, this is my consumer, this is what he or she wants. How do I service it? That's one thing. And the second, I think, fundamental change which has happened is the entire reorganization of this, internal structure, right? It was completely fragmented earlier, right? Somebody going to a store, or you have store operations. Somebody buying online, you have an online operations. Today, it is again to say, this is the customer, this is what he or she is buying from me. How do I create that seamless experience, not only externally when they log on to my website or to a Myntra or to going to my store, but internally, how do I align myself so that they are not lost in the cracks and there is one consistent team servicing them? So these are 2-3 things which teams are changing. And I think the fundamental change, which everybody spoke about, is the data. Right, companies struggle on data, because it's coming from so many sources. So I think a lot of companies today, if they know or they have to identify what to change, I think they're taking a pause and seeing where that data is, getting insights from that data. Because I think one approach that I follow with companies is that do not ask customers what they want. They do not know. You have to observe them. You have to see what the data is throwing to you. You use that, and then you build your entire approach to them, right? So that's something that companies are really focusing on in terms of getting the data corrected or data consolidated in one place, and then defining how to approach. So I think these are the 3 changes that I'm seeing in terms of discussions that I have with CEO, CXO levels in organizations.
I can,
Sure.
I can build on these 2 points that Katie and Vivek said, right? Because I completely agree. One point on the customer journeys, and the second one more closer to what Vivek was talking about. So on customer journeys, if you take a look at Airtel, just take our 3 businesses on the consumer side. We have a live TV business, broadband, and we had mobility. 3 separate businesses. For the longest time, we built them as 3 separate businesses. And when we bought our digital journey in, this was almost 5 years ago. If you look at our app, you try to pay for your DTH service, you will get a particular journey. The minute you try paying for mobility, you'll get a completely different journey. Why? Because it was built by 2 different teams on the same app. Now, our customers, brilliant point that Vivek said, observe what the customer is saying. You would see user behavior on these 2 journeys very different. One journey is more efficient in conversion, the other one's failing. And you talk to customers, you understand, because there's no consistency in how Airtel is approaching that. In one place, you got a red button. In the other place, you got a green button. So now they're thinking, well, I should not click red because that's danger. But at the same time, the business thought, oh, red is Airtel's color. So let's put OK and red. But then you have OK and red consistent. You didn't. Another place you have OK and green. All this had to be sorted by observing the customer. And today, if you come on the app, when you're paying for something, it's a singular journey. You add things to cart and you check out and you pay. And that's a journey we've been kind of painstakingly doing for 3 years, only because we observed the customer and we realized that they were not able to enjoy all these different varied journeys. They wanted consistency. The second point I want to build, and these are just very interesting insights about India. So when we showed our payment page, just talking about data, we saw that we had an enormously bad payment success rate. Somebody's trying to pay, they're not succeeding. Now, we thought it was a technology problem. Somebody mentioned it's not always about technology, right? We thought it was a technology problem. See, the fun insight we had is when we looked at the data, we found out that a lot of customers were going to net banking instead of UPI, instead of credit cards. So now the team concluded net banking is the most popular way of paying. Therefore, there are problems with it. Then we called the customer. And then he said, customer, looks like net banking is your favorite payment schema. Guess what the customer said? They're like, sorry, what's net banking? And we're like, in this path where you see this net banking thingy, oh, hamara wala bank. Bank ka logo samajh mein aa gaya, main wahan pe click kar diya. I clicked the logo, I understood. And we sitting over here, luckily we had the data to tell us this is a section that's failing. But we had the fortitude to call the customer. They told us that they liked the logo, so they clicked it. This is the extent to which the Indian customer does not understand digital. So data plus just being with the customer, observing them, as Vivek said, really allows you to build the best journeys. And then you increase your success rates. So just to scroll.
Okay, Amarnath has a point. I mean, it's fun to hear all these stories. I'm sure you have some of those as well, Amarnath.
Yes, Asu. So I think I'll first tell you about our journey, and we have been like fortunate that we had Arvind as the CEO who drove this agenda top down, and he's like 5 years, 6 years back, he was very clear that Metro needs to operate the way the other organizations in the industry operate. Coming on to the customer experience now. Think of a customer, Asu, and for him, a grocery retail is like buying soap, shampoo, etc. on a monthly basis. Doesn't have a lot more, any fun when you're going to buy, right? Coming to the store, and what is his routine if you look at inside the road, or maybe what is his journey inside the store? He goes, picks up a basket, moves around, picks up, walks out. Now, this has been so monotonous as a journey, yeah, without any engagement, without any personalization. You're just looking at the shelf, you're looking at the price, putting it inside the basket. You liked it, disliked it. It's a black hole for a retailer. Why did the customer didn't turn up next month, though he had been like coming here every month? No one knew. And if you have to really convince those customers to come inside the store on a monthly, fortnightly, whatever you think of is a frequency at your store, you need to have a proper engagement at your store, right? When I say engagement, so most of this, again, harping on how these tech systems have been like, obsolete. You don't know if you have to personalize a customer experience in your store. You compare it with, say, online experience, right? So Asu bought X brand of toothbrush, he's been buying, replacing it every 3 months. So you have a recommendation that Asu, you buy Colgate toothpaste now, right? Can you do that recommendation in the offline world? And if you're not doing it, you're technically obsolete. On the payments, building onto what others said, same problem happened with us. We somehow realized, everyone is looking at a net banking and, making a payment through net banking, and realize that, the customer technically connects with that bank logo and then says, oh, this is the payment option, because ours is a Kirana set, right? You don't expect a Kirana to look at, the UPI and look at the customer journey, the flow. So as a retailer, and as others said, I think we need to connect with the customer to understand what is he looking at, what is he trying to look at, yeah? And then offline and online, his journey should be like, more or less in the same funnel, so that it's a brand recall, it's a recall of his journey on both the platforms, and it becomes a seamless to him.
Okay, so let's go across to Anand as well. Yeah, Anand, you wanted to make a point here.
I was just trying to build on what others said and Vivek said. I think so. One of the questions that you actually asked is, how important is CX, for the CXO committee or even for the board? In case of Bata, we went slightly through a very evolved phase. Stores shut down, as I actually mentioned, and then we actually launched, the website used to exist, and it would contribute about 3-4%, pre-COVID. But as we went through this COVID transition, we had to actually really change the way we actually offer omnichannel experience. So we scaled up our presence on omnichannel, the marketplaces like an Amazon and Flipkart, to relaunching our website, which is all more connected on a world-class platform, to even actually looking at what is the backend service. It means, do I actually have a ticketing service to actually look at the customer who came into my store and had a problem, and is it one ticket I'm actually able to look at it, or is it like different Excel sheets? And if I'm actually committing to a store customer that I can actually refund you in X number of days, can I actually also do the same for an online customer? So I think these journeys needed to be actually stitched together across multiple functional teams. So it's not just one team that actually looks at the customer as such. It's like marketing doesn't own a brand. The brand is actually built by every touch point in an organization, right from a store manager to the guy who's actually installing, let's say, an Airtel dish, to somebody who is actually even speaking to you as a CXO, across there. So similarly, the customer experience doesn't actually get delivered, just by a campaign or just by a store manager, but even to the guy who's actually sitting in a finance team or a warehouse assistant who's packing the right product. Let's say, in case of Bata, if you order like, sneaker color, and if I delivered you a black shoe, how quickly I'm actually able to get that product picked up, return, and actually replace it with the right product that you actually have. We worked on all these consumer journey, looked at the breakage points cross-functionally, and then in the last 18 months, we've actually grown from really 5% contribution of the digital revenue to 15%. So it's almost like a 3x journey for us, from that perspective. But even looking at the services like channels, somebody actually asked a question: do you actually look at one channel, which is like a website? Or do you look at a store, or can you actually create some hybrid new channels? So like conversational commerce, we launched like a WhatsApp shopping during the transition phase. And we saw that there was a big uptick across there. We use consumers, as a point for collaboration. People would actually call a Bata store and actually say that, okay, what are my loyalty points? But we said, okay, it's now available on your WhatsApp. You just send a WhatsApp, it figures out what is your mobile number, and then you can actually have the experience yourself, So that's what we see that, okay, the future for us, if you look at omnichannel, is giving more customization or personalization to the consumer. It's also about conversation. It's not one way, the previous world. It's also a lot more about collaboration. Like in our case, one of the fundamental things in a shoe industry, footwear industry, is what is your size? And because consumers were stuck at home, we actually said, okay, I'm going to give you a scan your feet, and you can actually figure out the shoe size. So the app would actually, the web app would actually tell you, what is your shoe size. And, we saw, Ashu, that because people were actually using that to actually place the order, it was right order, right size. And the number of returns actually reduced by 6 to 7%. In an omnichannel retailer, the returns can actually kill a retailer. So we saw that, okay, that became like a good opportunity for us to actually offer a superior experience.
Okay. Anirudh, Anand referred to some of the hybrid channels as well. For something which is as core as food retailing, food and grocery retailing, what are some of the opportunities that have emerged for you? And how have you built on your traditional understanding of the business?
So I'll touch upon two things. The first I will touch on the non-food, and that will actually stretch Anand's experience, how it flows into non-food expenses. So we have, for a longer time, we have not been able to open our non-food section. So our food sections are open for the shopper, but non-food section was not allowed from on-premise angle, but from a delivery angle, it was allowed. So quickly we got into some system, and we did digital floor work for the shopper. So individually, all the customer service agent, they become the relationship manager, and we took the housewives, students, digital floor work of options, sizes, and print, and we just got their sizes, and a sizable amount of apparel we sold just through phone calls. It's unheard of, and we never thought that can happen. So all the traditional challenges got broken into a fragmented market. So in apparel, the way we sold through the phone call, similarly in summer we sold air conditioner, refrigerator, so through the same digital journey. Now coming back to food, food we are doing for much longer years. What we figured out that it's always data driven and AI driven calls, but at a flow level they don't understand that much of data translation. We enable them if it is an online app-based program or if it is a phone call-based program. But when the footfalls are happening, for them, their memory become the digital card for the shoppers when the customer was interacting. So instead, how we can give a seamless experience to the shoppers in a multi-channel format. So we become a solution-oriented company. And what we thought, I will give the kitchen solution to the housewife who is entering into her kitchen every morning and evening, and how I can solve her problem. Because every morning, be it your house, our house, we figure out 2 or 3 things are missing in the kitchen. And we are only half an hour or 45 minutes from actually getting into the cooking session. So we took a positioning that, You just call us, and within some few minutes, half an hour or 1 hour, I will supply that to you. And that solution become a recipe-based solution. So from a product-based transaction-oriented retailer, we went, one is the channel, which become a phone call channel or app channel. Second, from a transaction at a product level, it will become a recipe-based solution-oriented company. The way I'm telling it, it never happened overnight. It took a couple of quarters. But actually now we can see the frequency of the shoppers with us is double of the frequency of app or offline.
Okay. Amarnath, okay, I would also like to take some questions that are coming in. There are a few of them coming in. There's a question from Sitaraman here and says, can CX stocks be totally distanced from retailers' inventory because the quality of items he bought, offers he got, it all that matters? Amarnath, your take.
So sorry, Asu, if you can repeat the question, or may I read?
Sure. So it says, can CX stocks be totally distanced from the retailer's inventory because of the quality of items he bought, the offers he got, or all that matters? Is it not? That's the question.
Yeah, it is, because see, I tell you what, Asu, I think one of the challenges of this whole omni-channel is managing your fulfillment, right? Yeah. Your order and fulfillment. So there is no dearth of order, let me tell you, for any retailer. If you open up multiple channels, order will just flow in if you have a good brand equity. The question here is, if you're keeping everything seamless, and as I'm assuming that your selection, price, availability as a hygiene, and then you are opening it up, right? The point here is inventory. Can you segregate it for the customer? At what point in time the retailer would know that this particular inventory, I should not accept any more orders? Because there are so this is the same pool of inventory that you are opening up for the customers. So the recommendation here is, if you are opening up an omni-channel, you should definitely know your cutoff. Yeah, your offline and online cutoffs should be there. You should have a separate inventory pool so that you don't end up in a bad CXR. So you can receive orders, but then that will lead to dissonance if you are just refunding or returning on account of unavailability.
Okay, there's another question from Vikas Jaiswal. It says, seamless CX strategy to amplify business growth. That's the point he's trying to make. How to capture customers' changing behavior patterns to deliver enhanced CX at all times. Aman, can I toss this one to you?
I knew this is coming to me. Right. See, very interestingly, Ashu and the gentleman who has asked this question, gentleman or lady, traditionally people consider sales is more like how well can you pitch the product. But if you look at the last decade, you'll realize it's not only about how well you can pitch the product. That's great. That's your branding. But it's more about psychology. Whether you're selling online or offline, how well can you know the customer, the consumer, the way they react? Now, technology, and often this happens that people go ahead and talk about why technology worked or did not work, is basically because of the reason that they only rely on technology. If you have good customer journey being intact, if you have an entire psychology of the customers being checked whether they are clicking on bank because of the HDFC logo or any other logo, or they're actually doing it because they've never been taught, then only you can reach to that level where you can design these strategies. And that's where technology would come into picture for you to actually relate and answer why you should have this and why should not. Now, interestingly, one of the conversation that we also saw, that people said, technology does not go in hand when people go offline. No, it does. It does, but you have to now involve the human intervention. Who's now, because when you're on a website or a mobile app, a bot is speaking for you. You should expect now a human should speak after seeing the same data when the person is there on offline. So yes, I changed my brush after 3 months. Would you like to have it again? Or why are you not coming to my store? Because somebody has not called him and checked. Have you gone out of vacations? Are you okay? Are you hospitalized? So it's not only that you should interact to your customer whenever the order is being required, but there has to be a consistent engagement. And that's where the technology would come into picture to guide you in that direction.
Okay. Also, okay, let's take one more question, and let me ask Vivek if you'd like to take this. Ashish Sharma makes a point, says that to my experience in the last 15 years of organized offline retail in India, digital transformation is like changing the wheels of a running car. What areas need to be prioritized to make it work with least disruption? Vivek, is there a fair comment always to make? Because things are evolving and it will always be a running car.
Yes, Ashu, I think it will always be a running car. No matter what you do, there will have to be some disruption, right? So what we suggest or how we embark it, and I think I've been saying this from the start, is that, fundamental building block is my customer, right? So when we worked with one of these grocery chains who were looking to launch an entire new customer program for both their online and offline, right? So where we spent time, we got to understand the customer, and then we actually did a pilot test so that, the existing customers, they were managed well, there was no big disruption. IT is a big change that has to happen, what will come in, and no matter how much we observe, it's only when you implement you will start to learn, right? And that gives you feelers of how to do. So I always tell clients that if you're looking to drive this journey, there are first thing that you have to prioritize. Please get a clear understanding of what you are solving from your customer perspective. Secondly, if you do not want to disrupt your entire setup, pick up key areas and launch it there, test it fully, and then sort of get into a larger scale launch up. So there has to be a prioritization either in terms of an area that you want to pick up or in terms of a brand that you want to do. But other than prioritization, it will only lead to a big sort of I would say more of dissonance to the customer. So take a little slow, but prioritize with the customer as the starting point.
Okay.
Ashok,
Can I just add?
Sure.
Okay. So I think just building on Vivek, I think it's a lovely question. I think you don't need to actually stop and literally, change the car tires and then, actually start again. So the advantage of working in a retail environment is that you have like probably hundreds or thousands of stores. You can actually do a pilot proof of concept let's say 10, 15, 20 stores, probably in different regions, and then see some of these learnings across there. Let's assume, and as Vivek also mentioned, start with one audience. As we segmented them into three, we looked at probably one audience and said, okay, for this audience, the journey actually has probably 5-6 steps. Let me do a pilot only for this step, which is, as an example, they don't want to step out during COVID times. Can I actually offer them shopping at their home, on their phone? Is phone the preference, or would they actually be called by a store manager, as Anirudh was actually mentioning in case of Spencer's. So I think look at these proof of concepts, look at pilots, and then you can actually scale it up. If something works, and work in a slightly agile manner. You don't need to perfect the product, because during this digitalization, during the last 18 months, consumers have become slightly more open. They are more forgiving, in terms of experiences. They know that, okay, everybody's going through a phase, and they're more accommodating in terms of how they actually give feedback to the brand also. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, Amanat.
So Asu, I think I concur with the view of Vivek and Anand. I think it's a learning. From our side, I can share you what and the panelists what happened to us. See, we wanted to do too many things before, pre-pandemic. I'm telling you, the roadmap was pretty comprehensive, and then it looked like it will take 3 to 5 years to do it. But then we realized that if you want to deliver it all in one shot, it's technically a robust, humongous task with a lot of manpower, capital investment, and then what we were not confident in, whether it will work, not work, and this is all 5 years back also. Now, one thing that came out as our learning is, if you're planning something new for an organization, that should be in synergy with your existing business, so that the overall, the larger scheme of things, the organization starts looking at the benefit immediately after your rollout, right? If you might have a very good, nice product roadmap, you want to do it everything, but if it takes 5 years, I think retailers mostly run out of the passions, right? The other important point also is here is your strategic ambition, yeah, and your aspirational customer your experience should firm up your omni-channel strategy. Yeah. So where you want to be, for example, if I say that, today I want to, and our actual ambition is to be #1 omni-channel player, B2B omni-channel player in the country. And then your customer, aspirational experience that you want to be, that should marry up your overall strategy. And then you pick up, as Anand said, you want to do a pilot in, say, one city, one store. There are multiple permutation combinations that will keep coming. And then you can just, pilot and scale it up.
Okay. Okay, let me also
Ashu,
ask
I think Adarsh had something to add. I think Adarsh was raising that.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Adarsh.
Worries. Thanks, Katie. I was just referring to another question that's within the same vicinity. So Sitaraman again asked, when Airtel says omni-channel, is it happening at the Kirana stores where the SIM is sold? Like customer details are known? This goes back to some of the question where I think it was Aman who mentioned offline also needs to have intelligence helping the customer. So this is in the same tune. So I just want to give you a sense of a story there. So when Airtel does offline, we develop using a concept called human in the loop. And I think Aman referred to it as keeping the human interaction in mind. So every human in our frontline, installer, a person in a Kirana store, it could be a call center agent, they all today have what we call a One Airtel dashboard that they carry with them. It could be an app, it could be a website. It surfaces to them customer intelligence with enough privacy controls. So it's not like they know everything about you, but all the information that is necessary for them to do their job is with them. For example, in the case of a retailer, the next best recommended action for the customer goes to them, to the retailer on their app. So when the person comes to recharge, they plug in their number. The minute they plug in the number, the dashboard is filled up with certain actions to be taken. And that is powered by AI on the back end. The same technology that is powering the app and other channels. So therefore, even the Kirana store person, within the limited purview of what the person can do, is being powered by data, is being powered by customer intelligence, and then they're serving. So this concept of omni-channel truly goes offline, powered by the same central systems that's powering the digital channels. So just a thought.
Okay. Okay. I'll take Anand. Anand wants to make a point, please.
No, I just wanted to add there, very nice point by others. Even we have something similar, we call it customer single view. The store staff and the managers can actually give the best recommendation, the next recommendation when a consumer walks in. But I want to actually add here that it's a huge culture change. You may actually have the best omni-channel strategy. If you don't invest on actually upgrading the frontline staff, their knowledge base, and how to treat the consumer, the interactions, I think it's not going to fly. So do invest in that last mile touch point because they are your brand ambassador. They actually deliver the experience. And it's very important to actually get that right, at the last mile and the last touch. That's where, coming to the running car example, that's where the tire meets the road, the rubber meets the road. Yeah.
So Prasad, I have a question there, because we are talking a little bit of privacy and how customers' data is exposed at various stages. For a lot of companies, when you get these emails from their teams, it says no reply at something.com.in or whatever. Okay, so this is customer experience. You are bombarded with SMS, you're bombarded with emails. Bombarded is the word. Why does that not go as input for CX?
It does, and I think you touched upon a point that I used to harp on it quite a bit to all the companies, tech companies. So all of us are here for one fundamental reason, because customer is important. And one of the greatest touch point is actually you reaching out to customer. Hey, here is a great set of products that you should probably buy, or maybe you had a great experience working with us, or maybe you bought a purchase something. Here is a summary of your order. And we say, don't reply to this email. Damn, why would you want to kill an opportunity for customer to interact with you? That is a gold mine. You want customer to reach out to you in the most frictionless manner. You create an opportunity and you kill it for yourself. And I think even now I see those marketing emails, and I'm telling you in whatever sense that I know, Ashu. In fact, we get a lot of those customer emails or business emails, right? where a business is standing to something. For me personally, those businesses who always encourage a customer conversation, listen, like even Vivek and others, talked about, observe, those are the businesses who are driving a better experience. If you try to send one-way communication, that's the reason, and no offense, and probably with a telecom expert on the call, I'd say the SMSs in the world is dying because it is asynchronous. That means you send out, you don't even know whether the SMS has reached the customer. There is no way to verify. And that's the reason I called in the beginning, the world is moving towards more of synchronous messaging, what I call is WhatsApp or a social messaging or like social messaging. You could still send a text within the context of customer, and you should understand that, oh, I've sent this text to the customer and customer has responded. Now the same customer went onto social media because this customer said, I've asked for it, they've not responded. If they're not able to find that information, that leads to frustration. So my only single recommendation, actually, when you have an opportunity to interact with customer, open your gate for hearing back from them. Yeah. Every touch point, you should listen from them rather than we should speak.
And if I may ask, Prasad, just a follow-up question. Also, some customers don't want it. What about them?
Absolutely. I think the best thing that has happened, in my view, from a customer point of view, GDPR that is launched a couple of years ago, right? It is given the power of who should they contact, how should they contact, in the power of a consumer rather than on the business. And the consumer can sign up and say, you know what, hey, I don't want you to be contacting me on phone, and I don't want you to contact you on probably on telephone, whatever that could be, and you should respect that. But I can tell you one thing, with again a lot of heavy heart, how many times, go back and ask yourself, you get unsolicited calls selling you card, loans, and all the other stuff, and more importantly, Ashu, where I get frustrated, you get a call and there's a voice bot talking. I said, damn it, I call you hello. You don't even say hello to me. I mean, I would personally never deal with such businesses who sends me automated voice calls. Sorry, it was earlier it used to be done by one of the FinServ company. I used to block the numbers. And I'm sure a lot of my friends also say, I'm sure others is there, he's laughing.
It's a business issue. It is definitely a business issue there. Now, Vivek, so in the light of that, because we are soon going to get India-specific, the IDPR as it's being called, so sometime we hope to have that in the near future. How does that change the way, CX happens? Because some of that will come under the purview of the IDPR. If you can shed some light on that.
So, Ashu, while I'm not an expert in the entire thing, but I think what brands, and we've been working with some legal companies of some, consumer product companies especially, I think they're still trying to understand the applicability and how it will evolve from an India perspective. And I think they believe that this journey is going to take maybe another 1 to 2 years till it happens, right? But if you ask me readiness, that is something which I think Indian companies are waiting for a little bit more. I don't think they are fully started on that journey, other than the larger telecom, banks, and all those things. I think retail, this sort of sector is starting, but I don't think it's as advanced, right? So I think they are waiting and playing a little bit of a watch game, seeing how this will evolve, and then sort of decide, what sort of data they can share. One thing which we also realize is that a lot of people take, Indian consumers a little bit for granted, because very often we just keep on clicking because we just want to move on to the next screen. So a lot of people believe that when it does happen, everybody will say, I accept, and will not really know what is happening, right? So that is something which I think a lot of education has to happen, both from the consumer perspective as well as for the company's perspective. So I think there's a little bit of time. That's my sort of view on this.
Okay, Amarnath, we had the experience of WhatsApp. I'm just using it as an example, not getting into the details of that. How the saying okay to their terms and conditions, it created a little bit of an uproar. So what does that mean for the future when you try and reach out, even as a B2B business, to some of those kiranas, to restaurants, or to other businesses?
Oh, that's a challenge, Asu, for sure, because even so, if you want to use the WhatsApp business account, right? I think what people don't understand, Ashu, is how much of it is actually getting your privacy issues, what kind of impact it will have. If you're saying just okay, is it like, you put under surveillance? Is it like, your chat goes unencrypted and then it's visible to, the operator? I think people, and then because of this, I think in our customer segment also, it so happens that if it is a negative trigger, yeah, then it becomes extremely, extremely difficult for a customer to convince that I would be using WhatsApp for marketing. Yeah. And then the customer decides that not to open and not to say okay, because if you have to use WhatsApp as a business account, you have to at least say first time okay to receive those SMSs that you send on a business account. And now people are so apprehensive about it, so that they said I just can't say okay. I can't say okay to everything that you send, right? And we had to convince them this is like, the promotional message, because the some of these contents that we want to send it to you can't be sent on messages. You'll not be able to open it up, right? But simply, I'm telling you, it complicates the life of a retailer, because if it doesn't work the way the customer thinks or the operator thinks, it has to be made far more simplistic than what it actually went. Yeah. And here in this particular case, I'm telling you, it's a problem for us. Now so you are limited with your communication channel, right? Your email rates opening rates of an email are pretty low. Yeah. SMSs, you don't know it's getting delivered. If it is getting delivered, did he didn't read? And then on top of it, there was something which was perceived as being working in the channel because WhatsApp penetration, etc. But then with this coming in, I think it has made life a bit complicated for us in terms of communicating with the customer.
Adarsh, as a pipe, and I just want a broad picture from a telco's point of view. The sheer reach that an Airtel kind of a brand has, and the other telcos also have. What does this mean, and how could that experience be enhanced? If not actually, if it doesn't fall, can it be enhanced at all?
So I think there's two parts to your question, which is what does the telco do structurally for everybody?
Sure.
Enhance the experience, and then how can we help a business enhance the experience? I think there are two questions there.
Okay.
Let me try to take both. See, as people were talking about spam and things like that, there are things the telco can do, which is, for example, every SMS that flows through our network, we could check it. We could actually have a whitelist. We could actually go block. Hence, you have concepts like DND, right? On the other side, there are businesses who are actually buying these SMSs, and then they are sending it through our pipes, right? So it's a bit of a conflict of interest in terms of like, which way do we support? Do we support the businesses or do we support the consumers? Some businesses treat consumers well, others don't. See, I think the right solution goes back to what was mentioned earlier. Telco should actually develop spam filters and give it in the hands of consumers.
Yeah.
Now, this is something we're thinking about deeply, and we want to kind of bring it out, let's say in the telco app. So there you can actually start analyzing your messages and say, I don't want these messages, and we can block it. There are things like that we should be doing. So I would agree, as a consumer, I get hit with that robo dial. I get hit with that SMS. And I'm thinking every day, how do you structurally change? The challenges being there is on the other side a business who's buying these assets from us. So putting the power back in the hands of the consumer is the right thing to do. And as a telco, structurally, how do we enable it? The data law will make some of this happen naturally. For example, today, I don't know if you realize, for the first time in my life too, I'm going to use the word blockchain in a manner that it's going to work. SMS is actually blockchain for all telcos in India, which means every business that is sending these SMSs is on record. So we have that much ready. Now the question is, if it's a business that's abusing, then what do you do with that? That policy is not clear. Once government makes that policy clear, the telcos can enable, no problem. So there is the structural thing that telcos can do. Now, let me come back to what can we do to make things better, right, for businesses and for consumers. We've developed a homegrown technology called Airtel IQ. It's nothing but a SaaS digital layer that is sitting on top of the telco. What does it enable businesses to do, and how will consumers benefit? One of the features the technology has is the business can put their name on that call that's outbound. So let's say you actually ordered from Swiggy and Swiggy calls you. You'll show up as Swiggy. So now you have context and you'll pick up. You're like, yeah, that's not a bogus call. And more businesses, as they start putting their name on, you at least know what call's coming towards you, whether you want to pick it up or not. Going back to a little bit of that personalization.
Sure.
Second thing is trackability. When you send something out, let's enable you to trace it. And this is why you see this SMS spam. Take 1 million people and spam all of them. Hopefully 10 of them want it. How about making SMS traceable? And this could be done with a simple thing such as a link or some backend tracing coming back to the business so that they can be more targeted. So these are things that IQ enables, which allows businesses to use the telecom resources better. And hopefully that also helps to the larger question you're asking.
Okay. So there's a very
I could resist, Ashu. I could resist one thing. I really liked what others talked about. Put the power in the hands of customer, and that's such a refreshing to hear that, right? If customer has a choice today to get spammed, absolutely. But at the same time, businesses also need to look at it. Let's say, I think we talked about market and customer segmentation. Businesses should smartly look at the data. Okay, we did a robotic calling to this maybe Katie Prasad 20 times in this last 2 days, but hardly there is they don't like it. In fact, they kind of go back into social media and comment about why you're spamming me. And that could be a segmentation. Maybe I'm not a digitally savvy born consumer for them, maybe by my age, maybe I'm an adopter, but I behave like differently in digital world, right? I think understanding consumer behavior and putting in the center, I think others what you just explained is so resonating. Give the power to the customer, let the customer decide what they want and what they don't want. I think that will address the privacy as overall for a big time.
Okay. Okay, this is an interesting question from Rishi Vijayaraj, and I'll just sum up the question for Aman there. He says, how is digital world going to manage that humane touch? It's something very important for businesses.
See, interestingly, businesses can manage the human touch only if you read the data, right? The data is the key. How you set up technology, what technology you set up, what's the background, which software, all this is secondary. Every aspect happens in the digital world is to capture a data. You look at Facebook, you look at Google, everybody's capturing data. The behavior or the purpose is not, of course, I'm going towards the good content. The purpose is to know the behavior and psychology of the customer. Now, if you understand this, like Katie said, that I'm calling him 20 times, he's not answering my call, understand he's a different category of customer. There's a category of customer who will answer your call after 7 o'clock. There's a category of customer who will not. There's a category of customer who opens their Facebook or Twitter as soon as they wake up. And there's a category of customer who will go on YouTube and watch Hanuman Chalisa. Yeah. Right? So you have to understand, if you do not categorize, and that's what Vivid also said initially, you need to, with the help of technology, categorize your data and go ahead and have your marketing done. There's no harm. I'm sure others would agree. Sending messages, no problem. We want them to send messages. Eventually, we want businesses to grow. But if you send messages without thinking about anything and say, I got 1 million data, let's just throw the messages, cool, you'll get blocked one day. You have to read that out of this 1 million people data that you have, what kind of behavior they are, what kind of background they come from, why do they want to talk? Some of them are incorrect numbers. You want to send to Aman, but it's going to Katie. Is it the right way? No, it is not. So you have to have this behavior, Ashu, where you just do not go blindly because you have a purpose or a tool in hand, but you have to put the human behavior. Understand that everybody's a human. See, businesses are run by humans. So businesses understand. Adarsh, being in telecom, guys, is still saying, listen, I do not want you to spam people. If messages goes down, I'm sure it'll hit the Airtel business, but we still agree. And that is what business needs to understand. We are not serving anybody else but to humans, and to understand the human behavior, we have to first test a thing that we are doing to others. Is it good to me or not? And if you believe that, it probably will work better.
Okay, so again, since today I'm on a headline giving spree, probably let me try and sum that up. So the animal behavior of companies sometimes needs a more humane touch, if I may say so. So today I'm on.
Go ahead with that.
Okay. Vivek, I'd like if you could probably give the sum and substance of some of those building blocks. Data is pretty sure it is. But for companies which are embarking on a newer journey for the kind of CX that could help them grow, what should be their first few steps? If you could share that, please.
Okay, so as I was saying, Ashu, the first step is the customer. Once I understand what my customer, I have observed him enough, and I know what he wants. The rest of the building blocks, I think, where we talk to companies is that it's not about reinventing the wheel, right? The entire service ecosystem right now in India has become exceptionally strong, right? Number of startups, established players are now there who can actually service and help you in terms of speed to market. So leverage alliances, leverage partnerships, and push your speed to market. That's the second. The third one is obviously your entire supply chain. What is your fulfillment model? What is your logistics model? Do you need to, again, can you leverage third parties and therefore push for this entire omni channel? And the last very fundamental building block, which I think I've heard all the panelists say, please ensure that your organization structure is aligned to what you are doing. You cannot have old KPIs running for a completely fundamentally new business model. You have to align your KPIs, you have to align your people, and you have to align your entire training module to ensure that they are all talking the same language. So I think these are the fundament, and obviously data analytics and all to support it. But these are the 3-4 fundamental building blocks which we suggest that companies embark on. You get speed and you build a sustainable model.
Okay, that's the big picture. Of course, too many details to work out on, and that's where the experience, some of the points that the experts make, that is important. Time now to probably wrap up. Yes, it is. Aman, can you sum it up for us? A vote of thanks for everyone as well, please.
Right. Thank you so much, Ashu. And first of all, the thanks goes to you for conducting this session. It's been a pleasure having you on board. And same goes for panel. Look at the kind of panel we have. We have people from the market. We have people from the digital space. We have Vivek, who talks about data and the behavior and experience that comes from, and Katie and me, who talks about the experience we got in terms of implementing these solutions. So guys, thank you so much for joining us today. Few of the points that we guys really got on touch and spoke about is data privacy, behavior of our customers, how technology can really help all of our customers, but provided it's being used humanely, it has a mind of its own, and the mind, of course, unfortunately, we are not living in the Terminator era that it has its own mind. We have to bring that mind. So how you read that data is also becomes very crucial. And with today's session, I think all of our viewers would reach to this conclusion that if you are building a retail company or you're going towards retail omni-channel behavior, make sure you go through all these points that we have covered. Make sure the bank logo is there so that they click the net banking point as well, or give them a good wallet as well to click on. So thank you so much for everyone for joining in. From Katie's point, from our point, we are more than happy. If there are any questions required, you can reach out to us on our LinkedIn pages, and we are more than happy to help.
Okay, Aman, thanks indeed. Thank you. So content is king is something that we've heard always. What, this 90-minute conversation also indicated, context is king. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us and being with us on the Economic Times. Signing off for today. Thanks indeed. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you.